Yeah, you invest 2 years of hard work. It's on your priority list, and you want an opportunity to perform in the one-off Test match, which is the WTC. And yeah, we weren't at our best in certain areas. We're able to maintain some pressure this morning, but yeah, all to no avail really in the end. So we're not a perfect team. We haven't been across the journey. We've found ways to win, and unfortunately this time we couldn't conjure that up.
Andrew, Pat spoke earlier about new test cycle, probably a reset situation coming up. Is that how you feel as well?
Yeah, I think we speak of that throughout the cycle in terms of rewarding those who have been a part of that journey, and there's no doubt that was a consideration for the selection for the final team here. As we embark upon the next cycle, we've got a bit of time to work through what that looks like. We've got some decisions to make, and the questions from you guys are relevant, and the topics are relevant around our batting, our bowling depth, Steve Smith's injury now. Yeah, so we'll take all that into consideration.
Do you think we'll see Sam Constance in the first test? He's obviously thought it through.
Like all these things, we'll process and make decisions, and he'll be right in the window. It was a big discussion leading into this Test match, and I think I was on the record a couple of weeks ago talking about the need to bed down that opening combination. We've had a bit of musical chairs there, so now might be the time.
What is the latest on Steve's injury? Do you expect to add it?
Nothing more than you got this morning.
Will you look to add an extra batter or two to the squad for listening?
He's going to travel with us, so yeah.
How is he personally? Sort of good news, I guess, not needing surgery, but yeah, how's he feeling after yesterday?
He's a bit sore last night. He's probably a little bit like all of us, a little bit disappointed around the performance put out there, and he wasn't able to be there at the end of the day. So yeah, I think it's just really about assessing what he can do and what he's capable of doing. There'll be a splint that is on that finger for a period of time, and then it'll be about what his function looks like.
Just regarding the reset, is there the prospect of adding players to the West Indies squad, just regardless of Steve's situation, or do you feel that you have the players in the squad to rejig the batting order as you see fit?
I think we've got the players in the squad at the moment. If Steve wasn't available for the first Test match, I think that would lend itself to having extra batting coverage, because if we lost another player, then we'd be short in terms of what we had on the bench and available. So at this stage, it'll probably depend on what his injury looks like, the assessment in the next week leading into the first Test match there. So at this stage, I don't envisage anyone being added, but the next 48 hours, that could shift on us, so we'll just assess that.
Andrew, because you've had this one test in these conditions, and you have the 3 tests in the Caribbean, you know what to expect there, and then the Ashes. So does selection from this point just stick to the West Indies series now, and then we'll think about the Ashes later, or are you already building up to it?
It's always a combination, and the connection between each series and the surfaces that you play on can be quite different. So you don't want to play in spite of the conditions, but you also want to understand where you're heading. So that can be a tricky balance. We've seen that in Sri Lanka around opening the batting with Travis Head on slower surfaces. What are we going to get in the Caribbean? We haven't been there since 2016, so there's a little bit of the unknown, but we feel as though we've got a squad that can cover all bases. Will we get spinning conditions? We've got 2 spinners in the squad, so do we shift into our sort of spin lineup in terms of the way that we play? And that goes for the batting order as well. So I'd like to think that we've been flexible around our options in the batting order. Other people are judging that and saying that's unsettling. I think we've got a group that understands when we're home, it looks a certain way. When we're away, it can potentially shift. So as I said, I don't know whether that makes sense, but we just don't want to play in spite of the conditions, getting ready for the Ashes.
On the basis of that, someone like Marnus opening, Cam Green batting number 3, so do they get judged? Because Pat Cummins said it's only for this test. So what does, for example, Marnus's case, like he was short on runs, and now he's failed as an opener in some ways. So does that have an impact on, say, his current future in this team?
I think we'll just take our time to get over this Test match and formulate what it looks like once we get there, the surfaces, the team, where Steve Smith's at. So there could be a position at 4. Do you move Cameron Green down to 4? Do you keep him at 3? So all those decisions we need to make, and one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we are prepared for the Ashes, but does the West Indies have a direct connection to the Ashes Perth Test match? I'd say it has little, but the people that are on that journey, I think, are the right people at this stage.
Just on that, Andrew, that sort of third inning situation where you started 70 odd runs ahead and lost a lot of wickets very quickly to sort of hand back some momentum in the game. I mean, looking back on that now, were there some other other personnel or other players you had here who could have dealt with that situation differently, or is that more just credit to Rabada and Ngidi?
I think you've got to give credit to your opponent in moments like that. Would we have liked to have been better in that situation? Of course we would have. It potentially would have shifted the game into the next day where there's a bit more sunlight, and we saw that the wicket took on a different complexion when the sun was out in terms of the way that it played. So we picked the best team at that point in time. Hindsight will tell us whether that's right or wrong. We've missed an opportunity. We also lost 5 for 24 in the first innings as well. So you put those 7 wickets that we lost in the second innings, you put that with the 5 wickets in the first innings, and that's 12 for not many runs. And I think we are better than that. But as we sit here right now, you've got to say that South Africa were better in this Test match. And we've got to look at the improvements that we need to make. There's no doubt about that. And that's across all 3 disciplines as well. So I know you guys want to talk about the batting lineup and where Marnus fits and all of that, but we're looking into all 3 facets of the game where we need to improve and keep improving to stay ahead of the opposition.
Do you have the time to properly do that? I know we've got.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah, we do. I mean, people think that you just sort of lob into a WTC and you have 5 days of preparation. The preparation starts a long time before that. So we're always thinking about it, communicating with our players. The quicks were built up 3 months out, for example. So it's not things that are made in a hurry. It's things that are designed, but things do shift on you at certain times, and the conditions can do that. Injuries can do that, but whoever gets the opportunity to play in that first Test match in the West Indies will be ready for that. And that goes for when we hit Australian shores again. We've got a nice build-up, and everyone wants to talk about the Ashes. We've got Shield cricket leading into that also. So probably the direct connection to the Ashes would be potentially the first few Shield games, more likely than the West Indies, in my opinion.
If you did get a pitch in the Caribbean, Andrew, that looked conducive to spin, would you be open to using Travis in that opening role again, as you've done on some continent?
We'd be very open to it. Yeah.
Andrew, with Usman Khawaja, obviously he's had an outstanding last few years. You had a similar situation a couple of years ago with David Warner coming to similar age and backing him through. As it stands now, do you see Usman as being a key part of the Ashes that's coming up?
Yeah. I think he's on contract. He's an important player. He gives us stability at his best at the top, and we like to look at our players at their best. And no doubt, a couple of failures here, and people then start to talk about maybe it's the end, maybe it's the end. I don't see an end date with the way he's training, the way he's preparing, the way he's moving. He went back to Shield Creek, got 100 last year, so I think he's got plenty of runs left in him. It's just it'll come down to his inner drive and the way he prepares, and it was a bit the same with Davey as well. The way he moved, we saw some positives in that. We knew that the runs were around the corner, and I think from memory he was the leading run scorer against Pakistan in his last series for Australia. So we feel as though Usman's got a big part to play.
With Marnus, Andrew, where do you see his batting at the moment? He's had important contributions, but I guess not that big score that you'd be looking for. But at 30, 31 years of age, even if his position is in a bit of doubt now, do you still see him as an important part of the future of this team?
He's a big part of the future of the team. Anyone that averages 45, 46 in Test cricket at that age is important. We've got older players there that are closer to the end than the start. We've got some younger players that are coming in, and you definitely want those guys that have, I think 60 odd Test matches. I'm not sure exactly the number of that, but at that age, he's really important. If he can get his game in good order for the next 4 or 5 years, he can underpin that batting order. But at the moment, he'd be disappointed with the returns. He's missed out on big scores. He threatened at the MCG, he got a pair of 70s, and if they had been a pair of 100s, then it's the conversation shifts as well. So, but we're confident that he could return to his best, and hence why we keep picking him. And it's at what point do we stop picking him?
Do you see benefits in potentially going back to a stint in domestic cricket? I mean, Markram
Yeah, definitely. I think most players across their journey get dropped at some point in time, and time in the middle is important. He had a couple of opportunities at county level as well. He gets games for Queensland, so he's still dipping in and out of international cricket back to domestic cricket. And it's about, I think he had a positive week here where he worked on the right things and had a great prep, and sometimes a great prep's never a key indicator of performance. So you can have a bad prep and still perform, but he was doing a lot right, and there's no harder worker than Marnus, and now it's really just about the returns. And at the moment, as I said, he'd be disappointed, and he's not the only one that'd be disappointed in that room, and I don't want to focus just on the batting also. I think that the bowling had some areas where, you know, we let the tempo of the game shift on day 3, and would that have looked different if we had more overs with a second new ball? Who knows?
Just with, yes, sorry. With how difficult top order batting seems to be at the moment in many places around the world, including Australia, do you, looking forward to the Ashes, do you see the top 3 as really being like a specialist position, or the way the game is now, could you throw someone up there who perhaps isn't a natural red ball opener, as England have done, I guess, and you know, could that be something that is also in the, you know, something that could happen?
I think we have been critiqued at throwing people up the top order that haven't been traditional openers, so I'm not sure where your question's heading around that, but like we're open to the best 6 batters, what they look like. I think Paddy's been on the record in saying that, you know, if we pick the best 6 batters, will we get the best return? We feel that's the case, and we've got a problem to solve around what the best order is, and I think it'll continue to create debate even when we settle on a top order, because I think that's the nature of the Australian cricket team, is that there's always great debate around selection, around positions, and ultimately it'll keep getting debated until we get the returns that A, the players expect, and B, that we expect as a coaching staff as well.
Thanks, everyone.
Just to follow up with those ones, Josh Inglis, how do you sort of get him, I guess, into the team and a chance to sort of show that he can be one of the best 6 batters?
He played in Sri Lanka, so he's been in that conversation before, and if the conditions lend itself to potentially a spin lineup, I think he'll become front and centre, and then if he takes that opportunity and mixed in with a bit of Australian Shield cricket, who knows where he could end up.